compilation of stories that genuinely freaked me out the first time I read them, the basement tape. Marcus found the tape recorder in his grandfather's basement 3 days after the funeral. It was tucked beneath a stack of yellowed newspapers from 1987, covered in a fine layer of dust that suggested it hadn't been touched in decades. The device itself was unremarkable, a standard cassette recorder with a built-in microphone and a single tape still loaded inside. He pressed play without thinking. Static filled the dim basement, crackling through the small speaker like distant thunder. Then his grandfather's voice emerged, younger than Marcus had ever heard it, trembling with something between fear and fascination. October 15th, 1987, 2:47 a.m. It's happening again. Marcus felt his skin prickle. He turned up the volume. I've been hearing the footsteps for 3 weeks now, always at the same time, always starting in the attic, then moving down the hallway, past Emily's room, past the bathroom, stopping at our bedroom door. Emily says I'm imagining it. She sleeps through everything, but I know what I hear. A long pause, breathing, then a sound in the background, distinct, rhythmic, footsteps on hardwood floor. There, his grandfather whispered on the tape. Do you hear it? God, please tell me the microphone picks it up. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Marcus's hand began to shake. It's at the door now. It always stops at the door. I've never opened it. I'm too afraid to see what's on the other side. The recording went silent except for shallow breathing. 1 minute passed. 2. Then his grandfather's voice again, barely audible. It's turning the handle. The tape clicked off. Marcus sat in the dusty basement, staring at the recorder. His grandfather had lived in this house, the same house Marcus now owned, for 43 years. He died peacefully in his sleep, in the same bedroom mentioned on the tape. Marcus had been staying in that room for the past week. He rewound the tape and listened again. And again, each time, he heard the same footsteps, the same door handle turning, the same terror in his grandfather's voice. By the fourth listen, Marcus noticed something he'd missed before. In the background, barely perceptible beneath the static, there was breathing that didn't match his grandfather's rhythm. Someone or something else was in the room during that recording. The basement suddenly felt too small, too cold. Marcus checked his watch. 2:31 a.m. His heart began hammering against his ribs. He climbed the stairs quickly, tape recorder in hand, emerging into the kitchen. The house was dark except for the pale moonlight streaming through the windows. Everything was still, normal. He exhaled slowly, feeling foolish for letting a 37-year-old recording unsettle him so completely. Then he heard it, footsteps in the attic. Marcus froze, every muscle in his body going rigid. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, moving across the ceiling directly above him. He told himself it was a house settling, pipes expanding, anything rational. But the sound was unmistakable. The distinct rhythm of someone walking. The footsteps moved to the attic door. He heard it creak open. Then they began descending the stairs, moving through the second-floor hallway with the same measured pace his grandfather had described. Past the guest room, past the bathroom. Marcus looked at his watch. 2:47 a.m. The footsteps stopped outside the bedroom, his grandfather's bedroom. He stood in the kitchen, gripping the tape recorder so hard his knuckles turned white, unable to move, unable to breathe. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to get out of the house, but his legs wouldn't respond. In the silence, he heard the door handle turn. The sound was soft, metallic, exactly as it had been on the recording. Marcus's rational mind shattered. He ran to the kitchen drawer, pulled out a flashlight, and forced himself up the stairs. His hands trembled as he reached the second floor. The bedroom door stood open. He hadn't left it open. He was certain of that. Marcus shone the flashlight inside. The room was empty. The bed undisturbed. Nothing out of place. But the air felt different, heavier, charged with a presence he couldn't name. He stepped inside, sweeping the light across every corner, finding nothing. Then his beam caught something on the nightstand. Another tape. It wasn't there before. He would have noticed. This tape was labeled in his grandfather's handwriting. October 16th, 1987. Do not listen. Marcus's blood turned to ice. With shaking hands, he ejected the first tape and loaded the second. He had to know. He pressed play. His grandfather's voice emerged immediately, ragged and exhausted. I opened the door last night. I couldn't help myself. I had to see. God forgive me, I had to see. A shuddering breath. There was a man standing in the hallway, but it wasn't really a man. It was shaped like one, tall and thin, but its proportions were wrong. Its arms too long, its fingers extending down past its knees. And its face? His grandfather's voice broke. It had my face. My exact face. But the eyes were empty, like looking into a void. It smiled at me. This thing wearing my face smiled, and when it opened its mouth, I heard my own voice speaking words I'd never said, secrets I'd never told, thoughts I'd buried so deep I'd forgotten of myself. It knew everything, every dark corner of my mind, every sin, every shame. A long, terrible silence. It asked me a question. It asked if I wanted to know when I would die. And God help me, I said yes. It leaned in close and whispered a date. Then it walked past me into the bedroom and stood beside Emily while she slept. It touched her hair with those horrible long fingers and smiled at me again. Then it faded, just dissolved into nothing. Another pause. When his grandfather spoke again, his voice was hollow. The date it gave me was October 12th, 2024. I've carried that knowledge for 37 years. Tomorrow is October 12th. I'm recording this as a warning. Don't open the door. Don't look at it. Don't speak to it. It doesn't just predict the future. It changes you. Knowing has poisoned every day since. This is my last recording. If you're listening to this, I'm already gone. And if you're in this house, if you're hearing the footsteps, the tape cut to static. Marcus's hands were numb. His grandfather had died on October 12th, 2024, exactly as the thing had predicted. He looked at his watch again, 2:53 a.m. The footsteps started again. This time, they were coming from inside the bedroom. Marcus spun around, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The room was still empty, but the footsteps were undeniable, moving around the bed, approaching him slowly. He backed toward the door, heart hammering so hard he thought it might burst. Then he saw it. In the mirror above the dresser, reflected in the flashlight beam, was a figure standing directly behind him. Tall, too thin, arms extending down past its knees. And its face. It was his face. The thing smiled with his smile, tilted its head with his movements. It raised one impossibly long finger and pointed at him, and when its mouth opened, Marcus heard his own voice speaking. "Would you like to know when you'll die?" Marcus screamed and ran. He crashed down the stairs, through the kitchen, out the front door into the cold October night. He didn't stop running until he was 3 blocks away, gasping for air, legs burning. When he finally looked back at the house, he saw a light in the bedroom window. A figure stood there, silhouetted against the glass. It raised one hand in a slow wave. Marcus never returned to the house. He hired someone to pack his belongings, listed it for sale the next day, and moved across the state. He never told anyone what he'd seen, never listened to the tapes again. But sometimes late at night, when the world is quiet and still, he hears footsteps in whatever apartment or hotel room he's staying in. They always start distant, always move closer. and they always stop at his door. The handle has never turned again. But every night, Marcus waits in the darkness, knowing that one day it will. And when it does, he'll have to choose whether to open the door and finally learn the answer to the question he never asked. The question that's been waiting for him since that night in October. The question that knows he's already made his choice.